Welcome to the College Admission TV Higher Education Podcast. We sit down with passionate leaders in education for their thoughts and insights in today's world. We are excited to have as our guest Joseph Howard, Vice President of Enrollment Management of Widener University in Chester, Pennsylvania.
Well, I always like to be able to start off with your journey, your personal journey, and I'd love to learn who are the mentors that helped shape your path.
Yeah, sure. It's an excellent question. So I'm actually a first-generation college student, was not college-bound, and had a formative English instructor in high school who insisted I apply to at least one college. And I did, and was admitted and had a generous financial aid offer. I thought I would be studying hotel restaurant management because that was something practical and something I knew. And it was really the college journey, becoming involved on the college campus. I became an RA. I started to learn about a career in higher education. That's really where the sort of higher ed bug bit me. And there are two people who really helped shape that journey during my undergrad and early career. And both I actually worked for at certain points. One was a dean of residence life, who's now a vice president for student life. And the other is vice president for advancement and later chief operating officer for a university. So those are Laura Zirkle and Jeanette Britt, respectively. And they really invested in me, helped me understand the virtue of higher education, how important we are to shaping the lives of young people, and what benefits we bring to civic society. And then I learned a whole host of other things from them.
So now, are you giving quite a few campus tours today? Do you personally?
I do not, unfortunately. I actually miss that. I try to get out with our student ambassadors a few times a year to keep myself fresh with the campus tour, but no, I haven't in quite a few years.
Well, you probably would still have an idea of the answer to this question around just, what's the most common question that you hear from prospective students, but then also from parents?
Yeah, I think increasingly what we've seen post-pandemic is, I think young people were sort of, their adolescent journey was disrupted. And so we're encountering a lot of anxiety with students wanting to know if they're going to be able to find their place, find the right support structures at the institution that they're looking at. And so a lot of the questions, we do an excellent job selling our academic excellence, but it's a lot of the intangible things that we're getting questions about from students and family. What support services are available? How do we help connect students and launch their careers successfully? What kind of accommodations do we need to sort of prop up for students in the wake of some of the learning gaps we've seen during remote high school that many of these students face? So we're getting a lot of questions in that vein, sort of how are we recovering from the pandemic and how has that informed our approach to working with our students?
Well, and so, I guess you could almost call it a slogan that I hear oftentimes today is meet students where they are. Mm-hmm. And I know that can come in different fashions, whether it's the modality of learning or other things. But can you talk a little bit about how your institution does just that, meet students where they are?
Yeah, we thought carefully about this. So our President Stacey Robertson, joined Widener in the summer of 2021. So she's just completed, summer of 22. So she's in the middle of her second year, and very early in her tenure, she led our community through a prioritization process to help us sort of hone our brand message. And one of the anchors we settled on there was the importance of belonging, and how do we infuse the concept of belonging in all we do, not just for our students, but for our campus community members. What does belonging mean if you work on our campus safety staff, or if you're a faculty member in a particular unit? And that concept really paired nicely with other initiatives that were already in place here at Widener. So we had propped up a concept called the Personal Student Success Team, where as students are onboarding to Widener during that summer leading up to their first fall, they're surrounded with a team of 6 to 9 people who are there to serve as resources for them. Everything from a personal librarian who's specific to your academic discipline to a first year experience coach who really helps the student navigate the sort of ins and outs of that new college journey. So those two things, and then belonging is really infused in a lot of other things we do. It's how we organize our professional development opportunities for faculty, thinking about classroom management techniques or inclusive pedagogical techniques. It's wrapped up in the language we use when we're communicating with students and families. So I think that concept for us has really come to be one of the hallmarks of a Widener education.
So how do you ensure that students are career ready when they go out into the marketplace?
Yeah, so many of our 3 top programs at the undergrad level are going to be engineering, nursing, and business. And all of those have very deep career experiences embedded in them. In nursing, for instance, you're going to have practicum experiences in a number of different healthcare settings. In engineering, we have engineering and business, really robust internship and co-op partnerships that we engage with corporate partners to get our students hands-on experience from day one. I was talking with one of our student ambassadors recently. She's a second year mechanical engineering student, and she just finished a co-op with a defense contractor in the region here. And as a second year engineering student, has already been guaranteed a job when she graduates from Widener, just from that experience. So it's really baked into the curriculum from day one, really.
So you have roughly 5,400 students and about 2,500 undergrads. Is that fair to say?
Correct. Yep. 2,500 undergrad, about 2,000, just shy of 2,000 grad, and then just shy of 1,000 law students. Okay.
So how big do you want to get, and how big can you get?
So, in terms of physical space, we are sort of near capacity on our main campus. So when we're talking bricks and mortar seated education, I think we're at a comfortable size. Where we are exploring is increasingly in the online space, particularly at the graduate and law school levels.
And so let's talk a little bit about affordability.
Sure.
Because I think I think the perception is, and you can just correct me if I'm wrong, but I think just a general consensus would be, well, a private's more expensive than a public. Okay. So how do you combat that, and how do you educate students and families?
Yeah, that's a really good question. It's something I'm thinking a lot about, not just for Widener, but nationally. So nationally, higher education has not done a good job talking about this. If we were to look at, in inflation-adjusted terms, the average out-of-pocket cost for higher education has not meaningfully changed in about 2 decades. So if we were to look at the Council for Independent Colleges, the average net price a student is paying has been fairly flat. Now, what has escalated are sticker prices, but private institutions and increasingly public institutions make available a very generous amount of internal financial aid to help offset those sticker prices. And so it's really about helping students understand how that process works, particularly when we're thinking about students on the margins. So first generation students, students from under-resourced high schools, helping them understand how the admissions and financial aid journey works. And we say very, very candidly that if you get us your FAFSA, we will get you a fulsome financial aid offer, and then we can have a conversation about affordability. And you can put us up against many of our public institution competitors, and we come within a very close range for our neediest families of being able to make a Widener education attainable.
So, when you look at Widener, how are you reaching out to alumni to make sure that they can, become engaged, stay engaged, and frankly, help with the marketing efforts of bringing in the next generation?
Yeah. So this ties nicely with that concept of belonging we talked about, right? President Robertson led us through this exercise, which led our Alumni Association to think thoughtfully about how they can engage in this process. And so last summer, a number of alums in various regions here and within a relatively reasonable drive held summer send-off sessions. So incoming Widener first-year students from their hometown were invited to join with our alums in various regional receptions to help welcome them to the Widener community. And then in a whole host of ways above and beyond that, many of our alums are hosting internships for us or serving on advisory boards that help inform our academic programming. A good example of that is we're launching a new bachelor's program in construction management. So very upcoming field, lots of demand. And one of our alums who's sitting on the advisory board for that group was actually helped lead the I-95 remediation project this past summer that helped rebuild I-95 in a matter of a few weeks. So they bring to bear all sorts of expertise and generosity in helping our students thrive.
So you all just set a record.
You did,
First year class in history. So 67% increase in freshman enrollment. That's astounding. So without giving away your secret sauce, how do you go about doing that?
Sure. Some of it was, the pandemic affected us all. And so Widener had several small classes in the wake of the pandemic. The region in which we're situated, Delaware County, at one point had the highest rate of COVID in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. And so the level of protections that we necessarily had to take were quite extreme. I mean, we were, this preceded my tenure here, but we were entirely virtual for the first semester of 2020, right? And so some of that 67% is, a return to a more normal class size for Widener. It still is a record, at best the record we set back in 2015. And it really is, it's about some of the things we've already spoken about. One, it was about engaging our students earlier in the process. So pulling back our communications to start talking with freshmen and sophomores in high schools and really engaging them. Two, it was about hitting this affordability message and helping students navigate the process. So, we increased our FAFSA filing rate among our admitted student pool by, I think, 15 percentage points in one cycle. That allowed us to get more offers of financial aid into students' hands and allowed families to make better decisions for themselves. And then finally, it's this concept of belonging. I think that if you were to step on our campus for any admissions event, you see a really authentic reflection of who we are and how you'll fit in here. We have a really high energy commercial that runs regionally. It's the take home message is, we are all Widener, you belong here. But this, the commercial is upbeat. You're getting this sense of the diversity of our student body, the enthusiasm on our campus. And one of the biggest compliments I remember this past cycle was having families come up to us at Admitted Student Day and telling us how authentic the commercial was to their experience on that day. So it really was about showcasing, helping students situate themselves on our campus and see that, we have their back. We're here to help them succeed, and we take their educations personally.
So I know that, some of your interests revolve around data science and machine learning. And so can you talk a little bit, as we look into the future and even currently, how do you see Chat GPT and other technologies impacting recruitment?
Yeah, we're seeing early previews of this already. There are some firms we work with who are already toying with technology that would help make assessments of students' writing samples or coding of a student's transcript be an AI generated process. We're seeing functionality that allows, in some of our marketing aid platforms, allows us to sort of get a head start with draft copy that some of these large language models can produce for us. So I think we'll see continued evolution there. I'm sort of curious to see how higher ed more broadly embraces these technologies. It was one of the discussion topics at our Board of Trustees retreat recently, where we're sort of exploring, what is the role of a chat GPT like system in the classroom environment, for instance. These tools, I think there's some fear about them from like a standpoint of plagiarism or originality of ideas. They're also really incredible tools for engaging with students and content. You can have full conversations with these tools and they can help you learn, right? So how do we embrace this technology, or do we sort of shy away from it? I think we'll necessarily lean into it. Part of our journey here is also like considering the technical, the IT security implications of this, right? So that's something our colleagues in information services are thinking about as we speak.
So, the higher education landscape is incredibly competitive. Some people would say, overly saturated. And especially when you look up in Pennsylvania in the Northeast, maybe even more so.
Yeah.
So now you've listed a number of ways Widener University competes, and clearly you've done something right. I mean, as far as, that first year freshman class, et cetera. But, do you, when you look at competition, do you also collaborate? I know you talked a little bit about your business collaborations, local community collaborations, but can you talk a little bit about how do you engage community businesses? And then again, when you look at another institution, is it strictly competitive? Is it collaborative? What does that look like?
It's both and. I mean, you're right on the money when you talk about the competition we face. So the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania had, at last count, 262 colleges. The state of Texas has 252, and Texas has something like 60% more high school students, right? So that creates a really dynamic, competitive landscape. We do, however, have strong partnerships with a variety of institutions. Many of our community school partners, we have relationships, direct feeder programs from an associate's degree into a degree on our campus. We have special scholarships for 3 of our premier community college partners. For our graduate programming, we partner with a number of institutions to guarantee seats in some of our highly competitive health sciences programming. So that would be, the doctorate in physical therapy. We partner with institutions who don't have that degree, but have undergraduate majors relevant to that degree, to guarantee them open seats based on articulation agreements. So there's the sort of informal leadership collaboration. So I mentioned President Robertson. She leads a group of women presidents in the region who get together and convene on a regular basis, sort of in the thought space and leadership space.
So, how important is really getting, you talk about that the reality of belonging and how important that is. And when you look at an institution, that continues to grow, but also I think is at that level where, I'd imagine you get to know a lot of the students, maybe if not all students, as compared to maybe a flagship public institution that has 40, 50,000 students, right? And there's probably pros and cons of each. But can you talk about, gosh, how important is that? And what an advantage that is, to be able to have the president know everyone, and you get a chance to really know people by name.
Yeah, it's very true. So I referenced earlier this idea that we take our students' educations personally. That actually comes from an old Widener tagline from many years ago, that we take our students' educations personally. And I think you see it lived out on our campus on a constant basis. And that's everyone from our campus safety officers to advisors to the president herself to partners in residence life. I relish the opportunity to engage with our students. My most prominent path there is to work with the work I do with our student ambassadors, to our student leaders who sort of, work our admissions events, give our tours, have a sense of the institution's history and traditions. And it's incredibly meaningful for our community members, our faculty and staff, but it brings to bear so many benefits for our students. We have a member of our custodial staff who oversees one of our buildings where a lot of our communication studies majors take most of their coursework. And he goes out of his way to celebrate every student's birthday, right? Imagine that this is the custodian in the building who knows when students' birthdays are and is celebrating them on that day. And then it also goes to, what we can bring to bear when students are on their way out of our doors and looking for their next career or looking to grad school. We can give that extra effort in helping prop up a letter of reference or a cold call to recommend a highly qualified member of our alumni for a particular position.
So, speaking of, let's just take incoming freshmen for a minute. How do you make sure that from a retention standpoint, from a persistence standpoint, that you're achieving whatever that benchmark is for you, to make sure, but in particular, I think of those incoming freshmen, and I think of my journey, and I would imagine there are a number of students out there as well this is new. This is new. It's easy to get lost. It's easy to not know what you want to do, and it might be easy to stop out. So how do you make sure that, especially the young folks, those freshmen, have those resources to make sure that they can persist?
Yeah. So I'll talk about two initiatives that launched this year. They've been in the works for quite a while. But one of them is this course called Thinking Through. And it's a special topics course that every first year student is enrolled in their first semester. The enrollments are kept intentionally small. We're talking 16 to 17 to 18 students in the classroom. And it's with our most senior and revered faculty. And again, it's organized around sort of a niche topic, right? So environmental sustainability, or I'm trying to think of some of the healthcare oriented ones, like the public health implications of healthcare. So these are experiences where our incoming students are getting connected with a senior faculty member early and often that very first semester. And the course is doing two things at once. It's engaging this special topic while also helping students adjust to new academic life. The second thing we launched this year that we're incredibly thrilled about is a program, a first year experience coaching program, where all of our students were assigned their own personal first year experience coach. This is not academic advising. These coaches organize their work around 8 dimensions of success. So everything from financial issues to transportation to time management. So they're engaging these coaches are proactively engaging their students in these coaching sessions to help them navigate whatever is in front of them. And for every student, that's something different. For some, it's helping the student connect with social opportunities to make friends. For others, it might be navigating challenges related to transportation or the public transit system. So we're hearing, again, this is the first year we've deployed this coaching program. We're hearing excellent things from students about this. And again, that was one of those critical belonging initiatives. We know our faculty do an amazing job with our academic advising. We saw the need for students, that a lot of the stumbling block students were encountering were not related to academics, were not necessarily financial, were more interpersonal or bureaucratic in nature. And so this coaching program is really helping to support students there.
So if you could look at that crystal ball for a minute, where do you see Widener University in a year, in 5 years?
Yeah, I think you're going to continue to see us reflect on the pandemic's effect on college-age students, because we know that it's going to be with us for many years. So I think there was a story in the fall about third grade math scores are the lowest they've been since the 70s. That means that, 10 years hence, those students are showing up on our door. And so we're really hearing from our faculty, from our student success folks, that we need to think thoughtfully about what college looks like for that population of students and help meet those needs. There are two sort of camps of those needs. There's sort of the learning loss that students encountered, and then there are some of the interpersonal losses that came with being, locked in your home during your peak teenage years, right? So helping students navigate both of those things continues to press on us. And we sort of see that as setting us up for success in the future, knowing that tomorrow's college goer, is more likely to be a first generation college student, is more likely in some cases to be a first generation American. So the more we're using this opportunity to build up those systems and supports, the better we see ourselves positioned for the so-called demographic cliff that comes in a few years. So I think you're going to see us increasingly double down on this concept of belonging, and connect that with our student success outcomes.
Does the cliff impact you today?
So the cliff affects Pennsylvania, the counties from which we recruit. So for the majority of our more local students, the counties that we're in are not as impacted, but it still has us thinking about market expansion into other markets to sort of hold ourselves at a steady state when 2026 to 2031 arrives.
So do you remember? I'd imagine you got a call, when you became the VP of Enrollment Management. Do you remember that time? Do you remember where you were? And
yeah. So my first vice presidency was I sort of had a slow ride into it. So I had been asked to come back and consult on a part-time basis for my alma mater. They were going through some transition, including a presidential transition, and eventually that morphed into the president offering me the role. I had no real. It was not a career goal of mine, so I sort of stumbled into that, but then realized I really enjoy I had always known I would stay in higher ed. I have, there is something mission bound about that for me. Now, whether that was at the public, in sort of a public policy space or a think tank space or on a campus, right? But what I've really found is how rewarding being part of an operation that helps connect students with opportunity and helping shape really strong and highly performing teams, how rewarding that experience is. And so I remember when I got the call for Widener, was thinking of moving on at the time, and Widener checked a lot of the boxes for many of the reasons we've talked about today, sort of the sense of community we have, the sense of belonging. So I do indeed remember when I got the call for Widener, and was thrilled to be able to join our community.
Eagles, Steelers, or neither?
So I am not a sports guy. So I will tell you a funny story. Early in my first vice presidency, I was in a meeting with our vice president for student life and our athletic director and some of our head coaches. And in one of my most embarrassing faux pas, referred to uniforms as costumes. So that is how much not a sports person I am. So I own that story to claim that up front. But I'm sort of a creature of where I am. So for now, Philadelphia all the way.
There you go. That's perfect. And hey, depending on how well or poorly that team's playing, maybe they are costumes. Who knows? Well, thank you so much for your time today. We really appreciate the thought leadership.
Yeah, this was a pleasure. Thanks for the opportunity.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of the College Admission TV Presidential Podcast. Stay tuned for our next episode, where we'll bring you another insightful conversation with a distinguished leader in higher education.